Hi everyone, welcome to Pure Tech Talk. My name is Chris Bannayan, and I'll be talking to you today about running Commvault on Pure from a modern data protection perspective. So a bit about myself. My name is Chris Bannayan. I'm a field solution architect at 퓨어스토리지. I've been at Pure for on and off for about 6 years. I actually did a 5-year stint, left and came back 6 months ago. Predominantly my experience in the last 25 years has been around building, architecting, implementing high availability solutions around data protection, clustering, backup, disaster recovery, and databases. So today we'll be talking about how we can actually build a modern data platform, a modern data protection platform on 퓨어스토리지. This is my first time in Korea. So I'm hoping to come back. I'm meeting all the lovely people in Korea. It's been a great place, and hopefully be seeing you people in the future and doing more trips to Korea and spreading the word around Pure. Now, before we get started into the actual data protection aspect of it, let's a few storage facts about Pure. So there's a few numbers on this slide, but if we look at how Pure has been developed and how Pure has been growing over the last sort of 15 years since Pure started in 2009, you can see that we're upwards of around $3 billion in revenue, 12,000 plus customers globally. And from a Gartner Magic Quadrant perspective, on the leadership scale, you can see we're 10 times leader in that perspective, in that quadrant. So that really basically says that from a Gartner perspective and from an analyst perspective, Pure is doing the right things from an all-flash market. Our vision, our implementation, and go-to-market in flash is seen as leadership material. Now, another important metric on here is the Net Promoter Score. So our NPS score is 82, which is pretty much the highest in the region or in the industry. And what that tells us is that our customers are willing to promote Pure, are happy and comfortable with our support, and are willing to promote us to their customers and their peers. So the NPS score is actually quite important to us. It really differentiates us from the other from the market and tells us how good we are, and basically it allows us to get feedback from our customers on how we are doing in the industry. Now, also there's some company milestones on here. So founded in 2009, and the vision was to create an all-flash data platform that is simplified, easy to use, high performant, and has basically a cloud-like model. So consumption-based, subscription-based system support that allows us to do non-disruptive upgrades. And we'll go through all this as we go along. But from 2009 is where we started, and all the way to 2024 now, where we've launched our latest product, which is the FlashBlade E. And I'll go through the products that we have in our portfolio. Now, if we look at the all-flash market, 퓨어스토리지 now is second behind Dell. But what it really shows is that, and there's a lot of good players on this slide, and companies that have been around for much longer than Pure. So for Pure to be second behind Dell really goes to show how Pure has actually accelerated our sales and accelerated as a company to be now second behind Dell EMC, considering there's all those other vendors that have been around much longer than Pure. So if we talk about modern data protection, now this slide is really looking at, let's look at some of these numbers. So 37.7% uptick in ransomware attacks between April 2022 and 2023. $740,000 in 2023 average cost of ransomware attacks, 4.5 million for large enterprises. 50% of organizations lost 25% or more of their data, their post-attacks. What this really says is that modern data protection is no longer just about backup and recovery. It's about being cyber resilient and having a cyber resilient platform in place that you can mitigate against these ransomware attacks. And be sure, ransomware attacks are happening daily. There is really nothing we can do to stop them what we can do is mitigate and put in measures in place on our solutions that help us mitigate any type of ransomware attacks. So if they do attack our environment, we can recover our backups. We don't have to worry about being held at ransom by these hackers. Now, I talked about a cyber resilient architecture. So what that actually means, so if we read this quote, so a cyber resilient architecture provides organizations with a tiered structure and scalable approach to building resilience and recovery capabilities. It allows for efficient resource allocation, prioritized recovery efforts, and a faster recovery times for critical systems and data. Now, what does all that mean? What it really means is putting in a platform or a data protection platform that has a tiered resiliency architecture. Now, and I'll go through what that means. When we're talking about tiered resiliency architecture, it comes down to the business RPOs and RTOs, the SLAs that the business has for running their business, how much data they can afford to lose, how much time we need to recover the data from any type of attack or an outage or a disruption. And with Pure, we have, when we're talking about Pure and Commvault, but specifically around Pure, we have various levels of resiliency in our tiered model. So from a business continuity perspective, if we look at from the top down, active cluster. Active cluster gives us an RPO of 0, which means no downtime at all. So if your business requires to be up all the time and not a second of downtime, then you look at implementing things like active cluster, which does synchronous replication between sites, between geographical locations, and provides you that ability to have an environment that is always up and always basically ready with an RPO of 0. As we go down the stack, active DR. So if your requirement for a business is that you can afford to have a system outage for seconds, then we look at active DR, which is basically based on asynchronous replication. The difference between the two is that active cluster, which is based on synchronous, when you write the data, it writes the data to the secondary site first, it waits for the acknowledgement back, and then it writes the data to your primary site, which means there is a latency aspect to it. We have to wait for that data to come back, get acknowledged back, and then we write it on production. With active DR, we don't wait for the data to be the acknowledgement to come back. We write the data. As we write it, it's continuously replicated to the secondary site. So our RPO now is no longer 0, but it's within the seconds range. So we can have a data loss of a few seconds, and our time to recover is typically a few seconds. Then we have asynchronous replication. So if we have RPOs that are in the minutes, 5 to 10 minute range, we use asynchronous replication, which is based on our snapshot technology. Now, that's based on a schedule. So you create a schedule, you will say, I will create a backup, and I'll create a schedule that says, run this snapshot every 5 or 10 minutes. As the snapshot runs, it replicates the data to the secondary or tertiary sites. This is asynchronous replication, which is, and our RPO is typically 5 to 10, 15 minutes. We can then, as we go down the stack even more, to Cloud Snap, so we can offload those snapshots. So if we want to archive them off to a different location, we can then take those snapshots, we can offload them into the cloud or to another storage array, an NFS target, and then we're looking at around a few hours of recovery, whether it's for our RPO and RTO. The next one down is local snapshots. Local snapshots give us the ability to protect our data in the case that we have a failure. Snapshots give us a point-in-time recovery perspective. So I can have an application and I can create local snapshot schedule that takes a snapshot every hour, for example. So my recovery point is an hour, but I can also shrink that down to minutes. So you can see that from this slide that it really depends on what your requirements are for your business. Local snapshots are great in the sense that they give us an RPO of minutes, but because of the nature of the way snapshots work, the recovery is in seconds because there's no overhead in a snapshot. When we take a snapshot with Pure Storage, it's instantaneous. there's zero cost in terms of storage initially, and the recovery point is at that point in time, and the restore is instantaneous. I can take a snapshot and I can recover my data if it's been corrupted or hacked, and I can recover it instantaneously, which is why the recovery for snapshots is in seconds. And then the last one is really our streaming backups and restore, which is typically legacy environments, or what we usually think of in terms of backup. We'll have a streaming backup that's running from, say, a Commvault environment that backs up your application and backs it up to either tapes or disk. In our perspective, from a pure side of things, from a modern data architecture, we're looking at moving to Flash. So we'll talk about how Flash is the sort of the repository for those streaming backups in the coming slides. Now, the aim at Pure is really to build an efficient data center, to give our customers that efficiency. Now, typically you'll have an application or a data center with primary applications. You have a primary application platform, large OLTP databases, workload consolidation, virtualized databases, etc. These are our tier 1 apps, and these are typically at the extreme performance level. So from that side of things, we have our FlashArray//X and FlashArray//XL. So for all those tier 1 apps, applications that need very low latency and high performance, we're at this range in our portfolio. From a balanced performance capacity perspective, so we're looking at things like using our products for a repository for a Commvault backup. We look at FlashArray//C. FlashArray//C gives us that unified file and block capabilities. So we're not at the high performance, lower latency tier of say a FlashArray//X, but it gives us that price performance that sustained gigabytes dollars per gigabyte or cents per gigabyte that allows us to put in a solution that for backup, for fast restores and ransomware recovery. But also there we have in that place where a balanced performance and capacity, we have our FlashBlade. Now FlashBlade is file and object. FlashArray is file and block. So really depend on the requirements, and we will typically work with our customers on determining the best requirements for your application, the best requirements for your business, and determine which one of these products in our portfolio is going to fit best in your business. So we looked at extreme performance. We will look at FlashArray//X and FlashArray//XL. All the products there have data recovery built into them, right? So we have flat snapshots, we have replication, we have synchronous and asynchronous replication, we have offloading. We integrate with Commvault to do things like IntelliSnap snapshot backups. So all our products are built in with data protection. So data protection is not only around backing up to a tape and restoring. It's about how you design and build your architecture, how you build your environment, and the measures you put in place to protect yourself against any type of disaster recovery, whether it be ransomware or an earthquake or a data center going offline. You need to make sure that your data protection methodology, your data protection practices are in place to mitigate and protect you against any outage. Now, if we look at the right-hand side of this slide, we're always on repository. So the first 4 arrays on the left is really around application, tier 1 applications, and then our FlashArray//C and FlashBlade//S to give us things like analytics and ML, but also as a backup repository. Now for archiving, we have another product which we just released recently, which is our FlashArray//E and FlashBlade//E. So this is a very competitive, cost-effective solution to replace all disk in a data center. And our mission is really, to make sure that we can get rid of all disk in the data center. If we can replace disk with spinning with flash, it's more efficient. It's better from a greenery perspective in terms of power consumption, and it's going to give us a much better performance layer than disk is. So in this environment, when we're talking at pure E family, we're looking at data protection, we're looking at data archiving, and we're looking at, say, content repositories and content libraries. So using all these products in the portfolio, we can design and build you an environment, a modern data platform that meets all your requirements by making sure that we pick the right products to fit in your organization. Now, how do we do MDP? How do we do modern data protection? So we talk about tiered resiliency. So I mentioned things like snapshots, asynchronous replication, active cluster. So having the ability to move data between environments or between sites or between arrays. So giving us the ability to have multiple copies of our data, which is critical. Okay, we can't have an environment where we only have one copy of data. We need to make sure we have multiple copies, and those copies can be, as I mentioned in the earlier slides, asynchronously replicated, synchronously replicated, or just moved from one array to another array. But making sure we have multiple copies is key. Data security and ransomware, snapshots, but we also have a feature called safe mode. So safe mode is crucial for ransomware mitigation. So what safe mode does, it gives us an immutable copy of the data or a mutable snapshot. That means that the data can no longer be removed or deleted or tampered with by a ransomware, by a hacker, for example. And I'll go into it in a bit more detail in the coming slides. So data security, ransomware, safe mode snapshots, ransomware recovery SLAs, and then backup and recovery, being able to back up and recover our data, either using snapshots or fast rapid restore, and we will use things like our Flash Blade to do streaming backups. So backup and recovery is multiple tiered. We can have integration with things like Commvault IntelliSnap, which allow us to take a snapshot of the data, index that data inside Commvault. So Commvault knows that we've taken a backup, but we've taken it very quickly because we've leveraged our snapshot technology. But we can also take a backup using streaming backups. So things like a full copy of your data. Sometimes customers want a full copy of data, and that's perfectly acceptable. We never actually aim to replace your backup software. We actually complement the backup software by using our technology on top of it. And then operational agility, AI-driven planning, workload protection assessments, performance SLAs, buffer SLAs, all those sort of things. All these 4 items make up sort of the environment of how we do modern data protection. But when it comes to data protection, we sort of have the 5 S's at Pure Storage. Speed, security, simplicity, scale, and sustainability. Now, speed is rapid restore, rapid backup, rapid restore. We want to be able to instantly recover our data when we need it. Now, whether that's instantly recovering from a snapshot or rapidly recovering from a streaming backup and we do a full restore, our products integrate with Commvault to allow you to restore that data very, very quickly. And we're talking, upwards of 60 terabytes per hour for a single chassis on a Flash Blade. And that's one chassis. We scale up to 10 chassis. So the performance scales linear with the actual hardware that we put in there. Security, being immutable is important. As I mentioned, having immutable copies and being able to instantly recover from that immutable copy is very important when we're talking about cyber resiliency. And I'll explain that a bit further to explain exactly how the safe mode works. When we turn on safe mode and we take a snapshot, that snapshot now is protected, as I mentioned earlier on, from any type of attack or ransomware attack. So if any type of hacker is in our system, and usually they'll be in your system for particularly days, weeks, or months, looking around, trying to find vulnerabilities inside your environment, trying to find ways of getting into your applications, into your backup environment, because once they're in your backup environment, that's where they control. That's where they have the keys to then basically ask for that ransomware. Now, safe mode snapshots, when they're enabled, will not allow anyone to actually remove or modify the backup, not even the administrator of the array. The way it works is that we nominate personas in your environment, and those people that are nominated will work closely with Pure support. So if any time you need to actually remove or modify a snapshot, It can only be done in conjunction with our support team. So if any hacker tries to actually get on there and tries to remove a snapshot, it's impossible. They can't do it. Even the administrator of your storage platform can't do it without the conjunction of pure support. Simplicity. It's, Pure Storage has been from the inception, it's been around simplicity. How do we make storage simple? How do we make it simple to use, simple to consume, simple to modify, simple to automate? So automation is key. It's all API driven. It's intuitive. It's non-disruptive. And that's one of the key things about how do we upgrade. When you buy a Pure Storage array, there is no forklift upgrades when you want to replace the controllers or move to another level of the actual array. Everything is non-disruptive. We can move from generation to generation without downtime. And we've got customers who have been running, I think, almost 9 years now and never had an outage. And they've just moved from generation to generation to the latest generation by using non-disruptive upgrades in Pure. And scale. Obviously, we scale very large. The scale is key. Being able to scale from a performance perspective, being able to scale from a capacity perspective. Both those things are key and crucial when you're talking about modern data protection. And then sustainability, making sure that we're green, and then reducing the environmental footprint of power and cooling is key, because everyone is thinking about that now. How do we reduce costs? How do we make the planet green? How do we reduce our carbon emissions? So sustainability is very important. Now, I think I'm going to touch a little bit on snapshots. I don't want to get too technical on the thing, but the reason I'm touching on snapshots is we sort of rethink the way we do snapshots with Pure because of the integration with snapshots and Commvault. Snapshots are engineered for speed. As I sort of mentioned, they're point-in-time copies of your data. They're instantaneous copies of that, the data or the volume. There's zero cost in terms of taking the snapshot. There's zero overhead. Obviously, as time goes on, you need to manage the snapshots on the array. But snapshots become the foundation for things like IntelliSnap. So IntelliSnap from Commvault calls and manages the hardware snapshots. These snapshots can then be indexed. They can be restored, and the application is made aware. We can mount those snapshots from a recovery perspective, or we can recover the snapshots. So that integration with Commvault makes snapshots a viable method of backup and recovery. But it's just one of those methods, right? Snapshots can also be used for, say, cloning, making multiple copies of your environment. And because it's all deduped with data reduction in the back end, we have various forms of data reduction on Pure Storage. Having multiple copies of data pointing to the same metadata. So when we create a copy of a volume, we take a snapshot, we create a clone of that snapshot. We don't actually copy the entire contents of the data for the second volume. The second volume is just a pointer to the blocks on disk. So if our original volume is 100 gig, our copy, our snapshot, and our clone still points to the same 100 gig. I can create 10 copies of that volume. It will still only consume 100 gig. So having the ability to do things like snapshots and cloning, again, gives us protection. So we can make multiple copies of our environment. If we lose one copy, we have a backup copy and a third copy. So again, when we're thinking about data protection, it's not always about backup and recovery to tape. And don't think about backup and recovery in the legacy way and how we used to do it. We really got to move forward and think about it from the modern data perspective, utilizing all the functionality and features of the arrays and the products that we have to give us a more agile and a better platform for data protection. So from a portfolio perspective, we have 3 products. We don't have a huge amount of products, but we don't need a huge amount of products. Our products will do everything our customers require them to do. And you can see here, so when we're talking, Commvault as a backup target, we have our Flash Array C as a primary backup target. And if you look at the performance, approximately 10 terabytes per hour recovery speeds. But as I mentioned, Flash Array is block and file. So it's block, NFS, and SMB protocols. Safe mode protection is enabled on all our arrays across the board, whether it's Flash Array or FlashBlade. Now, moving on to FlashBlade in the second one, is a rapid restore and multi-workload platform. So being able to rapidly restore data. So when we're talking, hundreds of terabytes of data that you need to restore within an hour or so, you can see here that we can do roughly 60 terabytes per hour recovery speed, but that's on a single chassis. The FlashBlade can scale to 10 chassis. So it's massively scalable. So it can pretty much meet all your performance requirements from a backup and recovery perspective. But we believe that recovery is the more important thing to do. Everyone can back up fast. Recovering fast is crucial. And when you're in a ransomware attack and you need to get that data back, you need to get it back as fast as you can. Having a product like FlashBlade or FlashArray that's able to stream that data back quickly and scalable in terms of performance is imperative. FlashBlade is file and block, a file and object. So we have S3, NFS, and SMB, and we have the same functionality from a safe mode perspective. So we can do safe mode on FlashBlade, but we can also do object locked. Now, object locked is for, say, S3 protocol. So in the past, you would have a Commvault repository on a FlashBlade mounted over an NFS protocol, and we can enable safe mode snapshots and protect our data. But what we've found, over time is that we actually get better performance by using S3 as the protocol for backup. S3 works great from an object perspective and actually scales a lot better. So having S3, we really wanted that ability to provide the same functionality to object store as we did with safe mode on NFS on file. So we came up with object lock, and object lock works similar to safe mode. It locks the objects inside the bucket that we create, but it allows us. It actually does an even better job. And what I mean by that is that with objects, when we write to the data, it's continuously actually backing up that data. It's locking the data on that bucket continuously. There is no point in time snapshot of, say, a file. And just to clarify that a bit better, if I use an NFS target, I'll take a safe mode snapshot. It's a point in time snapshot, and I might take one 30 minutes later, and another 30 minutes later, another 30 minutes later. My point of recovery is 30 minutes. With object lock, because it's working at the S3 at the bucket level, it's continuous. There is no actual point in time. It's always moving, right? I'm always up to the point in time where I need to back up to restore the data. So I have no sort of point in time because I don't need that point in time. And then we have FlashBlade E. Now, FlashBlade E, as I mentioned, is for our archiving, long-term retention, and a secondary backup target. However, if we look at it from a performance perspective, we can still get approximately 25 terabytes per hour recovery speed from a platform that's designed to replace disk. So it's very cost effective, but it still provides us really high performance that meets pretty much most of our backup requirements, really. Again, all the object lock immutability is across the board. So we have all that safe, immutable backups and snapshotting from FlashArray C to FlashBlade to FlashBlade E. But FlashBlade E gives us better economics. So when we talk to customers about decreasing their actual data center footprint from a backup perspective, most customers will have environments where they may have massive tape libraries or large amount of disk arrays consuming a lot of power, a lot of cooling, a lot of heating requirements. FlashBlade E hits that point. It basically it enables us to replace those archive locations. So there's that archival data or your tape data. And if we start with the FlashArray E, then we're usually 1 to 4 petabytes of storage, and the FlashBlade E is 4 to 10 petabytes of storage. So it's less than a fifth of the rack space. We're talking about 80% reduction in power and cooling. Better reliability because we're using all flash. We're not running on spinning disk anymore. We're using direct fabric modules that we basically develop and use in all our storage platforms. It's got built-in protection, so the likes of RAID and the likes of all the snapshotting that we talk about, lower operating costs and less e-waste. So it really makes a more cost-effective solution and a more sustainable solution to replacing your archival storage. But how do we make things even faster with Commvault when we're using pure storage? So the key is really speed. The way Commvault works is that they have a concept of a thread pool, and every time you create you do a backup or you write data or you read data, you write to a blob, that spawns a TCP connection. That TCP connection can now be spread across all the blades. So each one of the blades in a flash blade has its own networking. So we actually create a thread pool that scales across all the blades in the flash blade, starting at 7 blades and going up to about 150 blades. So as we create more threads on the Commvault thread pool, that thread pool scales per blade and scales linear. So increasing performance that way. Simplicity, one single bucket. All we need to create is one single bucket for backup. That bucket scales across all the blades in the environment and across all the chassis. So simplicity is a key, as we talked about. We no longer need to create complex, repositories and configurations. We just create one bucket on a FlashBlade environment, point our repository to that bucket, and there we go. It scales in capacity and it scales in performance. Again, as I talked about scaling, one bucket, that's all that's needed. It's dynamic path for all our Commvault data to flow in and out, and without sacrificing any performance. And then having safe mode. So safe mode complements the environment of a Commvault environment where we can protect our data. So we can put all our Commvault configuration and metadata on a volume, and we can put that volume under safe mode protection, so that even if a hacker or we get ransomware attacked or we get a hacker in the environment, our backup data and our metadata is protected, so that if we ever need to restore back, again, we can just use the people in the organization who are authorized to access that data. We'll contact our support environment, and we can recover that data easily without having any ransomwares pointed at us. So it's really about having safe mode everywhere. And as I mentioned, safe mode is across all our arrays, all our portfolio. It protects the environment. It really allows us to have that immutability of storage. It allows us to scale our platforms. It gives us the ability to create a modern data platform and then have the ability to protect all the data inside that modern data platform. And it's free of cost. There is no overhead and there's no charge for enabling safe mode. So really, I think when we're talking about building an environment for an organization, when we're talking about designing and architecting a solution, we really need to make sure that we put as much mitigation and and risk as possible. And with Pure, we do that by enabling safe mode snapshots. In a little bit more detail around safe mode, it's really about creating policies, having the authorization, so allowing up to 5 authorized people to manage that process and manage the snapshots and manage that interaction with support. And then tuning the eradication timers. The eradication timer allows us to specify how long we want to keep those snapshots on disk, whether it's for 24 hours or 30 days. After 30 days, we can then eradicate and actually remove those snapshots. But that gives you the flexibility of doing that, and even 400 days on some of the other arrays. So it's highly flexible. And then we can obviously disable eradication if required. So my last slide is really around, from a data protection perspective, what does it look like from a before and after? So on the left-hand side, we have a before configuration where we have a Commvault media agent, a server, backing up to a FlashBlade, but then our archiving via NFS and S3 is to a bunch of tape and disk. So we've got a very large data footprint. It's consuming, it's creating a lot of heat, a lot of power. It requires periodical forklift upgrades to replace that tape or that storage. And the management overhead is difficult, right? Managing disk, especially legacy disk, becomes difficult because parts become scarce, and just finding the people to manage those resources that are quite old becomes a challenge. And then if we move to the right-hand side, after, so we still have our Commvault media agent on top. We have our FlashBlade that's doing our local, repository for the 14-day period, the rapid restores. And then we're moving that to a long-term retention, but now we're moving it to FlashBlade E. So we're replacing all that hardware, and that could be racks of hardware, with potentially one chassis, really depending on what your capacities are and your requirements for archiving. But we now move to a model where it's high density, it's low power consumption, we're saving on power and cooling, we're providing non-disruptive upgrades. So we no longer have to do those forklift upgrades. We can go from array to array, to the next model array, all non-disruptively. There is no downtime for anyone. All the systems can be managed by Pure One. And Pure One is our monitoring solution inside the cloud. It's the SaaS service that we have. All the arrays will send telemetry into Pure One periodically every hour, and that's performance and health information. So we can manage all our arrays and manage our fleet of products from a centralized location. And then obviously, FlashBlade Object Lock adds that additional protection from ransomware for your Commvault backups. So what can Pure deliver? Pure delivers a cyber resilient outcomes. And that's what we're really aiming to do, is move away from what you've maybe come to know about data protection, but moving to a new modern data protection perspective. Using Flash, right? We can use Flash now because the cost has come down. The cost on FlashBlade E is similar to disk, so we can replace all that aging disk infrastructure, replace it all with high performance, low cost Flash. Thousands of customers running Commvault. We have thousands of customers around the world running Commvault. It's operationally efficient and simple. It's easy to deploy and significantly more reliable than any older platforms that you may have. The products never go obsolete because we have our evergreen model of always updating. Right, so we once you sign up to Evergreen and Pure Support, every 3 years you can upgrade your controllers to the next level or the next generation of controllers, completely non-disruptive. It gives you that subscription model, subscription to innovation, really. And then we have all the portfolio. As I said, we don't have a huge portfolio, but we have a full portfolio for the right solution. Any solution that you're after, our products will meet that product requirement. And then simplicity of scale. Scaling when required, scaling from operational agility, scaling from performance, and scaling at capacity. So thank you very much. I hope that's been insightful, and I hope to see you guys again next time in Korea. Thank you.